You will bow. The command echoed across the stone arena, reverberating off ancient walls that had witnessed 1,000 submissions. Kira Donovan stood in the center of the fighting pit, blood dripping from a cut above her eyebrow, her hands still clenched into fists. The beta who had just spoken, a mountain of a man named Garrett from the Eastern Peaks pack, circled her like a predator savoring the kill. Around them, hundreds of wolves from every corner of the kingdom watched from the tiered seating, their eyes glinting with anticipation. This was what they had come to see. Not skill, not strategy. Humiliation. I said, "Bow, Omega." Garrett's voice dropped lower, laced with the commanding power of his rank. Kira felt the pressure of it against her skin like a physical force, the way all lower-ranked wolves did when a dominant asserted authority. Her knees trembled. Her body wanted to obey, every instinct screaming at her to submit, to make the pain stop. But then she felt it. That spark of defiance that had kept her alive in a world that wanted her dead. Her wolf surged forward in her mind, not with submission, but with rage. "Make me." The words left her lips before she could stop them, and the arena fell into shocked silence. No Omega spoke to a beta that way. No Omega refused a direct command. Garrett's eyes flashed yellow, his wolf rising to the surface, and Kira knew she had just signed her own death warrant. But she had been signing that warrant her entire life. Simply by existing, simply by refusing to disappear the way Omegas were supposed to. If she was going to die, she would die on her feet. Garrett moved with the speed of his rank, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. His fist connected with her ribs, and Kira felt something crack, the pain exploding through her chest like wildfire. She hit the ground hard, the packed earth of the arena floor unforgiving beneath her. Blood filled her mouth. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard the crowd roar with approval. This was entertainment for them. This was justice, an Omega learning her place. Kira pushed herself up on shaking arms, spitting blood onto the ground. Her wolf was howling inside her, furious and feral, demanding she fight back even though they both knew it was suicide. Garrett was twice her size, triple her strength, and had the backing of one of the most powerful packs in the kingdom. She was nothing. Nobody. But she had never let that stop her before. "Stay down," Garrett warned. But there was something in his voice now. Not anger. Confusion. Maybe even a hint of respect. "You have fought well for an Omega. Do not throw your life away for pride." Kira dragged herself to her feet, every movement agony. "Pride is all I have left," she said, and she meant it. She had no family, no pack that truly claimed her, no position or power or future. But she had her pride. She had her refusal to break, and she would hold on to that until her last breath. She raised her fists again, and Garrett sighed. He moved toward her, and Kira knew this was it. This was how her story ended. In an arena built for wolves with names and lineages and destinies, not for orphans from the border territories who should have known better than to dream. But before Garrett could strike, a sound split the air that made every wolf in the arena freeze. A howl, not of challenge or greeting or mourning, but of pure, absolute dominance. It was a sound that bypassed all logic and reason and struck directly at the wolf within, the primal core that recognized power when it heard it. Kira's knees buckled, not from injury, but from the sheer weight of the presence that howl announced. Her wolf, her fierce, untamable wolf that had never submitted to anyone, did something it had never done before. It lowered its head. Around the arena, wolves of every rank did the same. Betas dropped to one knee. Alphas bowed their heads. Even Garrett, who moments ago had been ready to beat her into submission, sank into a position of reverence. Only Kira remained standing, too shocked by her own wolf's reaction to remember to follow protocol. And then he entered the arena. Alpha King Matthias Blackthorn was not supposed to be here. The dominance games were overseen by regional alphas and their councils, not by the king himself. He had not attended in the 5 years since he took the throne, preferring to send representatives while he managed the complex politics of a kingdom. Still recovering from civil war. But there he was, moving across the arena floor with a predator's grace, his presence so overwhelming that Kira could barely breathe. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes that gleamed like molten gold in the afternoon sun. He wore simple fighting leathers, not the formal regalia she had seen in official portraits, and there was something wild about him, something that suggested the man was barely contained within. The civilized veneer. Power radiated from him in waves, the kind of power that made other alphas look like children playing at dominance. He walked directly toward her, and Kira's survival instincts finally kicked in. She dropped to her knees, bowing her head the way every wolf in the kingdom was supposed to when in the presence of their king. Her wolf whimpered, a sound it had never made before, and Kira felt a tremor run through her entire body. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Stand. His voice was deep, resonant, and when he spoke that single word, Kira felt it vibrate through her bones. She stood on shaking legs, keeping her eyes downcast, because to meet an Alpha King's gaze uninvited was to invite death. But then he did something that made her breath catch in her throat. He reached out and lifted her chin with one finger, forcing her to look at him. The moment their eyes met, the world exploded. Kira gasped as sensation flooded through her. A connection so intense it felt like lightning coursing through her veins. She heard Matthias draw in a sharp breath, his eyes widening with something that looked like shock, or maybe horror. Around them, the arena seemed to fade away until there was nothing but the two of them, locked in a moment that felt both infinite and terrifyingly fragile. Her wolf was going insane, throwing itself against the barriers of her mind, howling one word over and over. Mate, mate, mate. No, that was impossible. Omega wolves did not have mates among the royal bloodlines. The genetics did not allow it. The power disparity too great for a bond to form. And yet, here she stood, staring into the eyes of the Alpha King, feeling a connection so profound, it made every other relationship she had ever witnessed look like a pale shadow. Matthias released her chin and stepped back, his expression shuddering into cold neutrality so quickly that Kira wondered if she had imagined the shock she had seen there. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the entire arena, formal and detached. This fight is concluded. The Omega has shown sufficient courage. She advances to the next round. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Omegas never advanced. They were included in the games as a formality, a way to reinforce the hierarchy, not as actual competitors. Garrett, still kneeling, looked up with confusion plain on his face. Your Majesty, the fight was not finished. I had not achieved submission. Matthias turned to him, and the temperature in the arena seemed to drop 10 degrees. Are you questioning my judgment, Beta Garrett? Garrett's face went pale. No, Your Majesty. Forgive me. Matthias nodded once, then turned and walked out of the arena without another word, without another glance in Kira's direction. But Kira could feel the bond between them stretching like a golden thread, growing thinner with distance but never breaking, pulsing with a life of its own. She stood there, bleeding and broken and completely lost, while around her, the arena erupted into chaos. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. The infirmary tent smelled of herbs and antiseptic, a sharp contrast to the blood and sweat of the arena. Kira sat on a wooden bench while a healer, an elderly woman named Margot, wrapped her ribs with practiced efficiency. Cracked, not broken, Margot said, her tone matter of fact. You are lucky. Garrett could have shattered every bone in your body if he wanted to. Kira did not feel lucky. She felt like her entire world had just been turned upside down and shaken until nothing made sense anymore. The bond was still there, humming beneath her skin. A constant awareness of Matthias, even though he was somewhere on the other side of the games compound. She could feel his presence like a compass always pointing north, and it was driving her insane. Why did the king intervene? Kira asked quietly. Margot's hands paused for just a moment before continuing their work. Who can say what motivates kings? Perhaps he was bored. Perhaps he saw something in you worth preserving. Or perhaps, she tied off the bandage with a firm tug. He simply wanted to remind everyone that he makes the rules, not tradition. That did not explain anything, but Kira knew she would not get better answers here. She thanked Margot and left the tent, stepping out into the late afternoon sun. The games compound was a temporary city of tents and training grounds, erected every year in the neutral territory between the major packs. For 2 weeks, wolves from across the kingdom gathered to fight, to prove themselves, to climb the ladder of dominance that governed their society. Kira had never wanted to be here, but her pack alpha had insisted, seeing it as a way to be rid of a problem wolf without the mess of an execution. She walked through the compound with her head down, aware of the stares following her. Word of what happened in the arena had already spread, growing more dramatic with each retelling. By tomorrow, there would probably be stories claiming she had challenged the king himself. The thought made her stomach turn. She needed to leave. She needed to run before the situation got any worse. But even as the thought formed, her wolf snarled in protest, refusing to consider any scenario that involved putting more distance between them and their mate. You, the voice, came from behind her, sharp and cold. Kira turned to find herself facing 3 women, all dressed in the fine clothes of high-ranking pack members. The one in the center was stunning, with long dark hair and eyes like chips of ice. Kira recognized her from the official announcements. Lyanna Frost, daughter of the Northern Alpha, and Matthias's intended bride. "So you are the Omega everyone is talking about," Lyanna said, looking Kira up and down with obvious disdain. "I must say, I expected someone more impressive. You look like you crawled out of a gutter." The 2 women flanking her laughed, the sound cruel and practiced. Kira kept her expression neutral, years of surviving in hostile packs having taught her when to fight and when to endure. This was a fight she could not win, not without bringing worse consequences down on her head. "I am nobody," Kira said carefully. "Just an Omega who got lucky in the arena." Lyanna stepped closer, and Kira caught the scent of her wolf. Strong and dominant. Not as powerful as Matthias, but formidable in her own right. "Lucky," Lyanna repeated, her voice dripping with mockery. "Is that what you call catching the king's attention? I wonder what you did to earn such luck. Perhaps you are more cunning than you appear." The implication was clear, and rage flared hot in Kira's chest. But she swallowed it down, forcing herself to remain calm. "I fought a beta and lost," she said flatly. "The king showed mercy. That is all." Smiled Lyanna, but there was no warmth in it. "Good. Remember that. You are nothing. An Omega who will return to whatever hole she came from when these games are over. The king has more important matters to attend to than the likes of you." She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. "Oh, and do try to lose your next fight. It would be terribly embarrassing for everyone if you continued to advance. We would hate for you to get hurt." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Kira watched them walk away, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. Her wolf was snarling, wanting to rip into them, to show them exactly what an Omega could do when pushed too far. But Kira had spent her whole life learning to ignore those impulses. Violence would only prove them right about her. She returned to the Omega quarters, a section of the compound set apart from the main pack areas. It was the smallest section, with the oldest tents and the least resources, because Omegas were the lowest of the low. Most of the Omegas here were young, barely adults, sent by their packs to learn humility. They gave Kira a wide berth, having learned in the first days of the games that she was different from them. She did not cry when the higher ranks bullied her. She did not bow her head and accept abuse with meek gratitude. She fought back, and that made her dangerous in their eyes. Kira lay on her bedroll that night, staring up at the canvas ceiling of the tent, feeling the bond pulse with each beat of her heart. She could sense Matthias somewhere in the distance, could feel echoes of his emotions bleeding through the connection. Frustration, anger, and underneath it all, a longing so profound it made her chest ache. He felt it too. The bond, the impossibility of it. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her wolf would not settle, pacing restlessly in her mind. Tomorrow she would fight again. Tomorrow she would have to face whatever consequences came from today's events. But tonight, alone in the darkness, she let herself acknowledge the truth she had been trying to deny. She had found her mate, and he was the one wolf in the entire kingdom she could never have. The second day of the games dawned cold and gray, with clouds hanging low over the compound like a bad omen. Kira woke before sunrise, her body aching from yesterday's fight despite the healer's work. She dressed in the simple training clothes provided to all competitors and made her way to the meal tent, where fighters gathered to fuel up before the day's matches. The tent was crowded, filled with the sound of wolves eating and talking strategy. Kira grabbed a plate of food and found a corner to eat in peace, or at least that was her plan. "Mind if I sit?" The voice was male, friendly, and when Kira looked up, she saw a young wolf with sandy hair and an easy smile. He wore the colors of the Western Mountains pack, a mid-tier pack known more for their mining operations than their fighters. Kira shrugged, and he took that as permission, settling across from her with his own heaping plate. "I am Owen," he said between bites. "I saw your fight yesterday. That was incredible, the way you kept getting back up. Garrett is no joke." Kira studied him, trying to figure out his angle. In her experience, higher-ranked wolves did not make friendly conversation with Omegas unless they wanted something. "I lost," she said simply. Owen waved that away. "Sure, but you survived, and you made him work for it. That is more than most can say." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Plus, you got the king's attention. Everyone is talking about it. What was that like? Being that close to him?" Kira's pulse jumped at the mention of Matthias, the bond thrumming in response to even hearing about him. She forced herself to stay calm, to not let any emotion show on her face. "He is powerful," she said carefully. "That is all." Owen looked disappointed, clearly, hoping for more dramatic details. "Come on, there has to be more than that. I heard he stopped the fight himself, walked right into the arena. That is not normal. The king does not do things like that." No, he did not. And Kira had no explanation for why he had, none that she could share anyway. "Maybe he was making a point," she said, echoing what the healer had told her. "Reminding everyone that he is in charge." Owen considered that, then nodded. "Makes sense. The king has been dealing with a lot of political pressure lately. The Alphas are pushing him to finalize his mating with Lyanna Frost, to strengthen the alliance with the North. Maybe he is feeling constrained, wanted to flex his authority a bit." The mention of Lyanna and mating in the same sentence made Kira's stomach twist, her wolf snarling with possessive rage. She took a bite of food to cover her reaction, chewing slowly until she trusted herself to speak. "When is the mating ceremony?" she asked, hating how much Shiva needed to know the answer. "Supposedly right after the game's end," Owen said. 2 weeks from now. It has been in the works for over a year, but the king kept delaying. Some people say he is not happy about it, but you know how political matings work. Happiness is not really the point. No, it was not. Political matings were about alliances, territory, power. Love was a luxury, and the mate bond was supposed to be rare enough that it never interfered with political necessities. Except now it had. And Kira had no idea what to do about it. She finished her meal quickly and left the tent, needing air, needing space. But as she stepped outside, she felt it. That pull. Matthias was nearby, closer than he had been since yesterday, and her wolf immediately oriented toward him like a flower turning toward the sun. She should walk away. She should go to the training grounds and prepare for her next fight. Instead, she found her feet carrying her toward the main administration building, a large, permanent structure that served as headquarters for the game's officials. She told herself she was just curious, that she needed to understand what was happening to her. But deep down, she knew the truth. She needed to see him again, even if it was from a distance, even if it destroyed her. The administration building was guarded, but the guards barely glanced at her as she approached. Omegas were beneath notice, no threat to anyone important. Kira slipped past them and into the building, following the pull of the bond, like a thread leading her through a maze. She found herself outside a closed door, behind which she could hear voices. She should not eavesdrop. She should leave before anyone caught her. But then she heard his voice, Matthias, and her feet refused to move. "I do not care what the council wants," Matthias was saying, his tone hard with authority. "The mating ceremony will proceed as planned. I have given my word to Alpha Frost." Another voice, older and raspy, responded, "Your Majesty, we understand your commitment to the Alliance, but there are concerns. The incident yesterday in the arena has people talking. Some are questioning whether you should be making such permanent decisions when you seem distracted." There was a long pause, and Kira held her breath, pressing herself against the wall beside the door. "I am not distracted," Matthias said finally. But there was something in his voice, a tension that suggested otherwise. What happened in the arena was nothing. A moment of impulse, a decision to show mercy. It means nothing. Each word felt like a knife to Kira's chest. The bond pulsed between them, and she knew he could feel her proximity, could sense her just as she sensed him. Was he lying to protect her? To keep anyone from discovering the mate bond? Or did he truly believe their connection meant nothing? "With respect, Your Majesty," the raspy voice continued, "it did not look like nothing. You have not entered an arena in years, not since." The voice trailed off, and Kira felt curiosity spike through her pain. "Not since what?" "That is not relevant," Matthias snapped. "My past is my own. As for the Omega, she will compete or not compete based on her own merit. I will not interfere again." Kira heard footsteps approaching the door, and panic seized her. She turned to flee, but she was not fast enough. The door swung open, and Matthias stood there, his golden eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. For a moment, neither of them moved. The bond flared between them, so strong that Kira actually swayed on her feet. She saw his jaw clench, saw the muscle in his neck jump as he fought for control. Then his expression went cold, blank, and he looked at her like she was nothing. Like she was exactly what Leanna had called her. Nobody. "You are not permitted in this building," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Leave. Now. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below." Kira ran. She did not think, did not plan, just turned and ran through the building and out into the cold morning air. She ran until her lungs burned and her injured ribs screamed in protest, until she was deep in the forest that bordered the game's compound, far from any other wolves. Only then did she stop, collapsing against a tree trunk and sliding down to the ground. The bond was agony now, stretched taut and screaming at her to go back, to return to her mate. But her pride, the same pride that had kept her standing in the arena yesterday, refused to let her be pathetic. He had rejected her, not with words maybe, but with that cold, dismissive look. He had made it clear that whatever the bond meant to her, it meant nothing to him. Or maybe it meant something, but not enough. Not enough to challenge a political alliance. Not enough to risk his throne for an Omega with no name and no value. Kira understood that. She had always understood that the world was not fair, that birth and rank determined destiny more than any amount of courage or strength. But understanding did not make it hurt less. She sat there for a long time, until the sun was high overhead, and she knew she had missed her scheduled fight. She would be disqualified now, removed from the games for failing to appear. That was fine. She had never wanted to be here anyway. But when she finally returned to the compound, prepared to pack her meager belongings and leave, she found chaos waiting for her. Wolves were running everywhere, voices raised in alarm. Kira grabbed a passing Omega, a young girl named Sarah. "What is happening?" Sarah's eyes were wide with fear. "There has been an attack. Someone tried to poison the king." The world tilted sideways. Kira felt the bond convulse, felt an echo of pain that was not her own. "Is he—" She could not finish the question. "He is alive," Sarah said quickly. "But he is in the medical wing. They are saying it was in his morning tea. Some kind of wolfsbane derivative. If he had drunk the whole cup." Kira was moving before Sarah finished speaking, running toward the medical wing with her heart in her throat. She did not care who saw, did not care if it exposed the bond. All she cared about was getting to Matthias, making sure he was alive, seeing him with her own eyes. The medical wing was heavily guarded, but Kira was beyond caring about protocol. She tried to push past the guards and was immediately grabbed, strong hands, clamping down on her arms. "Let me go," she snarled, her wolf surging forward, lending strength to her struggles. "I need to see him." "The king is not receiving visitors," one of the guards said firmly, "especially not Omegas who have no business being here." Kira fought harder, desperation making her reckless. She could feel Matthias on the other side of that door, could feel his pain through the bond, and every instinct in her body was screaming at her to get to him. Then the door opened and a man stepped out, tall and distinguished with silver streaking his dark hair. Kira recognized him from official portraits. Beta Marcus, the king's second in command and closest advisor. Marcus took one look at Kira, at the way she was struggling against the guards, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "Let her go," he said quietly. The guards hesitated. "Sir, she is just an Omega. She has no clearance." Marcus's eyes never left Kira's face. "I said, let her go. Now." They released her, and Kira stumbled forward, catching herself against the wall. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then gestured toward the door. 5 minutes. Do not make me regret this." Kira did not question the gift, just slipped past him into the medical wing. The room was large and well-appointed, clearly reserved for high-ranking wolves. Matthias lay in a bed near the window, his skin pale and sweat beading on his forehead. A healer hovered nearby, but when Kira entered, Marcus must have signaled her to leave because she bowed and exited without a word. Kira approached the bed slowly, her chest tight with fear. Up close, she could see the signs of poison in his system, the way his muscles twitched involuntarily, the labored quality of his breathing. But he was alive. He was going to survive. "You should not be here." His voice was rough, strained, but still carrying that commanding edge. His eyes opened, fixing on her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I know," Kira whispered, "but I felt." She gestured helplessly at her chest, at the bond that connected them. I felt your pain. I had to make sure you were okay." Something flickered across his face, an emotion too quick to name. "Who said you could feel anything about me? Who gave you permission to care?" The words were harsh, but there was no real anger behind them. If anything, he sounded tired, defeated. Kira moved closer, drawn by a force she could not resist. "The bond gave me permission. Or the moon goddess. Or fate. Take your pick. I did not ask for this any more than you did." Matthias closed his eyes. "The bond is a mistake, a cruel joke. It cannot exist between us." Kira felt tears prick at her eyes but refused to let them fall. "Why? Because I am an Omega? Because I have no political value? Because you are promised to someone else? Because I will destroy you," Matthias said, opening his eyes to look at her again. And this time there was no coldness in his gaze, only a deep, aching sadness. "Everyone I have ever cared about ends up broken or dead. My parents, killed in the war. My sister, murdered by my enemies. My first beta, poisoned just like this. I am cursed, Kira, and the bond between us is just another way for fate to take something precious and turn it into a weapon against me." It was the first time he had said her name, and hearing it in his voice made something crack open inside her chest. She reached out without thinking, and took his hand, feeling the spark of contact race up her arm. "I am not that easy to break," she said softly. "I have survived this long without a pack that truly wanted me, without rank or protection. I am stronger than you think." Matthias's fingers tightened around hers, and for just a moment, she saw hunger in his eyes, a desperate longing that matched her own. But then he pulled away, breaking contact. "Strength will not matter when my enemies come for you, and they will come the moment they realize what you are to me. They tried to kill me this morning, and they will try again. But next time, they might choose a softer target, someone I care about, someone I would sacrifice anything to protect." The implication was clear. Caring about her made her a target. The bond made her a liability. "So what do we do?" Kira asked, though she already knew the answer. She could see it in the resignation on his face. "We ignore it," Matthias said. "I will complete my mating to Lyanna, securing the alliance my kingdom needs. You will finish the games, or withdraw, your choice, and we will both pretend this connection does not exist." Kira wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she was so tired of fighting. Tired of being unwanted, even by the one person fate said was meant for her. "And if I cannot pretend?" she asked quietly. "If my wolf will not let me walk away from this?" Matthias looked at her with such profound sorrow that it stole her breath. "Then you are stronger than me," he said, "because I do not know if mine will either." The door opened and Marcus stepped in, his expression apologetic. "Your Majesty, Alpha Frost has arrived to see you, and she has brought her daughter, Lyanna." Of course, the woman who would be Matthias's queen, who had every right to be at his bedside while he recovered from an assassination attempt. Kira stood quickly, knowing she had to leave before Lyanna saw her here. But as she moved toward the door, Matthias spoke one last time. "Kira." She turned back, and he was looking at her with something raw and honest in his eyes. "Be careful. Please." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and left the room. She passed Lyanna in the hallway, the other woman's eyes narrowing with suspicion when she saw Kira emerging from the king's room. But Marcus was there, smoothly intercepting Lyanna and guiding her toward Matthias, offering some explanation that Kira did not stay to hear. She walked back to the Omega quarters in a daze, her mind churning with everything that had just happened. Matthias had as much as admitted that he cared about her, that the bond was real and powerful and terrifying, but he was still going to reject it, going to mate with Lyanna and doom them both to a half-life of longing for something they could never have. Her wolf was howling in rage and grief, and Kira felt her control slipping. She needed to shift, needed to run, needed to do something to release the pressure building inside her before she exploded. But as she reached her tent, she found someone waiting for her. A woman, small and elderly, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Hello, child," the woman said, her voice gentle. "I have been waiting for you. We need to talk about what you really are. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." Kira stared at the old woman, every instinct screaming danger. "I do not know you," she said carefully. "And I am not interested in conversation." The woman smiled, and there was something ancient in that expression, something that spoke of centuries instead of decades. "My name is Anya. I was oracle to the old king before the war, and I know what bloodline runs in your veins, even if you do not." Oracle. The word sent a chill down Kira's spine. Oracles were rare, wolves blessed by the moon goddess with the ability to see threads of fate, to read the patterns in the world that others missed. Most considered them myth now, relics of a more superstitious time. But looking at Anya, Kira did not doubt what she was. "I am nobody," Kira said, repeating the lie she had told herself and others for years. "An orphan from the border territories." Anya shook her head slowly. "You are the last daughter of the Silver Moon line, thought extinct when your parents were murdered 20 years ago. Your mother was a royal guardian, one of the ancient protector wolves who served the crown before politics and power. Games corrupted the old ways. That is why your wolf will not submit. That is why you have survived things that should have killed you. And that is why the bond formed between you and Matthias. The words should have sounded insane, but something deep inside Kira recognized their truth. She had always been different, always stronger than an Omega should be, always marked by a defiance that seemed woven into her very DNA. "Even if that were true," Kira said slowly, "it changes nothing. I have no proof, no pact to verify such a claim. I am still just an Omega in the eyes of the world." Anya stepped closer, her eyes intense. "Your wolf is proof. When she awakens fully, when you learn to access the power sleeping in your blood, everyone will know what you are. The question is whether that happens before or after the king makes a catastrophic mistake." Kira's heart was pounding. "What do you mean, awakens fully? My wolf is already—" Anya cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Your wolf is caged, child. Locked behind barriers your subconscious built to survive in a world that would have killed you if they knew your true nature. But the mate bond is breaking those barriers down. You have felt it, have you not? The power rising inside you, begging to be released?" Kira had felt it. Strange surges of strength at odd moments, flashes of insight that felt like they came from somewhere outside herself. She had assumed it was stress, or the bond, or her imagination. What happens when the barriers break completely? She asked. "You become what you were meant to be," Anya said simply. "A royal guardian, a protector wolf with power that rivals an alpha king. The perfect complement to Matthias, the balance to his strength. That is why the bond formed between you despite the impossible odds. The moon goddess does not make mistakes, child. She knew you would both need each other for what is coming." Kira felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "What is coming?" Anya's expression turned grim. "War. Not the kind fought with claws and teeth in open fields, but the kind fought with poison and politics in the shadows. Someone wants Matthias dead, wants the throne destabilized. The assassination attempt this morning was just the beginning. The poison." Kira had been so focused on Matthias's recovery that she had not stopped to think about the larger implications. Who would want him dead? He ended the civil war, brought stability. Anya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Stability is not profitable for everyone. There are those who benefited from chaos, who want the old ways restored where might made right and the strongest took what they wanted. And there are those who fear what Matthias represents, a king who cannot be bought or controlled. Kira thought of Lyanna, of the political alliance that mating represented. Is Lyanna involved? I do not know, Anya admitted. My sight shows me possibilities, not certainties. But I do know this. If Matthias completes the mating bond with her before your wolf awakens, it will destroy him. A mate bond denied does not simply fade away, Kira. It turns toxic, poisoning both parties slowly from the inside out. Matthias thinks he is protecting you by pushing you away, but all he is doing is ensuring you both suffer. Kira sank down onto a nearby bench, her mind reeling. So, what am I supposed to do? March up to him and announce I am some kind of ancient protector wolf? Without proof, without verification, I would just look insane. And even if I had proof, it does not change the political reality. He needs that alliance with the North. Anya sat beside her, her weathered hand covering Kira's. You are thinking like a wolf who has been beaten down her entire life. You need to start thinking like a royal guardian. Your ancestors did not ask permission to protect their kings. They did not wait for political approval. They saw a threat, and they eliminated it. The word sparked something in Kira, a flicker of the defiance that had always defined her. You want me to find out who is trying to kill Matthias? It was not a question. I want you to become what you were born to be, Anya corrected. Finding the traitor is just the first step. But yes, that would be a good place to start. Kira looked at the old oracle, seeing the certainty in her eyes, the absolute conviction that Kira was capable of this impossible task. And slowly, she felt her own doubt begin to crumble. She had spent her whole life being told she was nothing, being treated as less than. But what if they had all been wrong? What if the strength she felt, the refusal to break, was not stubbornness but destiny? How do I awaken my wolf? Kira asked. Anya smiled. The same way you do everything else, child. You fight. Over the next 3 days, Kira fought. She fought in the arena, winning matches against opponents who should have destroyed her. She fought against her own doubts and fears, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. And she fought to uncover the truth about the assassination attempt, quietly asking questions, listening to gossip, piecing together a puzzle that most wolves did not even know existed. She learned that the poison used on Matthias was rare, derived from a plant that only grew in the northern territories. She learned that 3 servants who had access to his quarters had disappeared the day after the attack. And she learned that Lyanna had been meeting secretly with a faction of northern alphas who opposed the alliance with Matthias, who wanted more concessions, more power. It was not proof. Not yet. But it was a pattern. And patterns were something Kira had learned to read from years of surviving in hostile packs. She also felt her wolf changing, growing stronger. The barriers Anya had spoken of were cracking, and power was leaking through in waves. During her fights, she moved faster than she should, hit harder, recovered. Quicker. Other wolves were starting to notice, starting to look at her with confusion instead of contempt. And through it all, she felt Matthias. The bond had not weakened despite their separation. If anything, it had grown stronger. A constant ache in her chest that reminded her what she was fighting for. On the 4th day, everything changed. Kira was walking back from the training grounds when she felt it. A sudden spike of fear through the bond that made her stumble. Matthias was in danger. She ran toward the administration building, following the pull of the bond and her own instincts. She arrived to find guards scattered on the ground, unconscious or dead, and the scent of blood heavy in the air. Her wolf surged forward, and Kira felt the barriers inside her finally shatter. Power exploded through her body, raw and primal and absolutely overwhelming. Her vision sharpened until she could see individual dust motes in the air. Her hearing expanded until she could track 3 different heartbeats in the building ahead. And her strength felt limitless. She crashed through the door and found Matthias fighting 3 attackers, all dressed in black with their faces covered. He was holding his own, but she could see he was injured, blood staining his shirt from a wound in his side. The attackers turned toward her, and Kira saw the moment they dismissed her as a threat. Just an Omega. A mistake. She moved like lightning, crossing the distance and slamming into the first attacker with enough force to send him flying across the room. The second attacker came at her with a knife, but Kira caught his wrist and twisted, feeling bones snap beneath her grip. The third attacker was smarter, backing away and reassessing. But Matthias was there, moving in perfect synchronization with Kira, as if they had fought together 1,000 times. They took the third attacker down together, and then it was over. Silence fell, broken only by their harsh breathing. Kira turned to Matthias, and she saw the shock in his eyes as he looked at her. Really looked at her, seeing what she had become. "What are you?" he asked, his voice rough with wonder. Kira smiled, feeling more herself than she ever had before. "I am your mate," she said simply, "and I am done pretending otherwise." Before Matthias could respond, more guards arrived, alerted by the noise. Beta Marcus was with them, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. The unconscious attackers, the destroyed room, and Kira standing there radiating power that no Omega should possess. "Secure the prisoners," Matthias ordered, never taking his eyes off Kira. "I want to know who sent them and why. Marcus, clear this building. I need to speak with Kira alone." Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but one look at his king's face stopped him. He bowed and gestured for the guards to follow him, leaving Kira and Matthias alone among the wreckage. The moment they were gone, Matthias crossed to her, moving so fast she barely had time to blink. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the violence that had just occurred. "Tell me I am not imagining this," he said hoarsely. "Tell me you are real." Kira covered his hands with her own. "I am real. I am here. And I am not going anywhere." "Your power," Matthias said, his thumb stroking along her cheekbones. "I have never felt anything like it. You fought like a royal guardian from the old stories." Kira laughed. "The sound slightly unsteady. That is because I am one, or at least I am supposed to be. My bloodline, my heritage, it was hidden, protected, but the bond awakened it. Understanding dawned in Matthias's eyes. That is why it formed between us. That is why fate chose you." Kira nodded. "We are meant to balance each other. You need me as much as I need you. And I am tired of fighting it, Matthias. I am tired of pretending this does not matter." She saw the conflict in his expression, the war, between what he wanted and what he thought was right. "The alliance with the North," he started, but Kira cut him off, "is built on lies and poison. Lyanna or her allies are behind the attacks. I am almost certain of it. I have been investigating, and all the evidence points north." Matthias went very still. "Are you sure?" Kira pulled back enough to meet his eyes fully. "No, not yet, but I will be. Give me 3 more days, 3 days to gather proof, and then you can decide whether a political alliance is worth more than your life and your mate." She saw the moment he made his decision, saw the walls he had built around himself crumble, leaving only raw, honest emotion. "I do not need 3 days," he said quietly. "I do not need proof. I just needed to know you were strong enough to survive what choosing you will mean. And now I know." Kira's breath caught. "What are you saying?" Matthias pulled her closer, until their foreheads touched, and she could feel his breath on her lips. "I am saying I choose you. I choose the bond. I choose whatever future we can build together. Politics and alliances be damned. I am saying I am done being afraid of losing you, when I never really had you to begin with. Tears spilled down Kira's cheeks, hot and unexpected. The kingdom will survive, Matthias finished. It survived a civil war. It will survive a broken alliance. But I will not survive losing my true mate. Not when fate was kind enough to give me a second chance at something real. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home. Like every piece of her life that had never quite fit suddenly sliding into place. The bond between them flared so bright Kira could almost see it. A golden thread connecting their souls, stronger than any political contract or strategic alliance. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Matthias rested his forehead against hers. There will be consequences, he said. Alpha Frost will see this as an insult. There may be conflict, Kira smiled fiercely. Then we will face it together. That is what mates do. Matthias laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. When did you become so wise? When I stopped believing I was worthless, Kira said. When I started believing I deserved someone who would choose me. Not because I was politically convenient, but because fate said we belonged together. Over the next days, everything moved quickly. The attackers were interrogated and revealed that they had been hired by a faction of northern wolves who opposed the alliance, fearing it would give Matthias too much power. Lyanna herself was not directly involved, but her father had known and chosen to look the other way, seeing the assassination as solving his political problems. When confronted with the evidence, Alpha Frost tried to bluster and threaten, but Matthias was done playing political games. He dissolved the alliance, sending Lyanna and her father back to the north with a clear message. Any further attempts on his life would be considered acts of war. The kingdom was shocked when Matthias announced he would be mating with Kira instead, a supposed Omega with no pack and no rank. But then Anya stepped forward, presenting evidence of Kira's true bloodline, documents that had been hidden for 20 years, testimonies from wolves who had known her parents, the revelation that the last royal guardian had been found, that the old bloodline still lived, changed everything. Suddenly, Kira was not a scandal, but a symbol, proof that the old ways and the new could coexist, that power came in forms beyond simple dominance. The mating ceremony was held under the full moon, with wolves from every pack gathered to witness. Kira stood in the sacred circle wearing white silk, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, feeling more beautiful and powerful than she ever had. Matthias stood across from her in formal regalia, looking every inch the Alpha King, except for his eyes. His eyes held nothing but love and wonder as he looked at his mate. The oracle, Anya, performed the ceremony, her ancient words binding them together in the eyes of the moon goddess and the pack. When Matthias marked Kira, claiming her as his mate and queen, the bond between them solidified into something unbreakable, eternal. The crowd erupted in howls of approval, the sound echoing across the compound and into the forest beyond. Kira and Matthias stood together, hands clasped, facing their future as partners, as equals, as mates chosen by fate. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, Matthias pulled Kira close and kissed her with all the passion they had been forced to restrain. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "My fierce, stubborn, impossible mate. I love you." Kira smiled, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. "I love you too. My Alpha King. My mate. My home." They made love that night, with a tenderness and intensity that left them both shaking, the bond singing. Between them, celebrating their union. And when they finally slept, tangled together in the massive bed, Kira felt a peace she had never known. She had spent her whole life being told she was nothing, an Omega without value, without purpose, without a future worth fighting for. But fate had other plans. Fate had given her a mate who saw her worth, a power that demanded respect, and a destiny that would reshape the kingdom. Weeks later, as Kira stood on the balcony of the royal palace, looking out over the kingdom she was now queen of, she thought about how far she had come. From the Omega quarters of the game's compound to the throne room. From rejection and humiliation to love and acceptance. Her wolf, once caged and suppressed, now ran free inside her, powerful and content. And the bond with Matthias grew stronger every day, a constant source of strength and comfort. She heard footsteps behind her and smiled as Matthias's arms came around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. Kira leaned into him, covering his hands with hers. "I am thinking about how I almost walked away, how I almost let fear and doubt win." Matthias turned her to face him, his golden eyes serious. "But you did not. You fought. You always fight." Kira rose on her toes to kiss him softly. "Because I finally had something worth fighting for. Us." Matthias smiled and kissed her back. And in that moment,
Perfect.
everything was...
If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming?